Hey guys, this is the 8th video in the Great Spiritual Awakening series. Today we're going to talk about how reincarnation works. This video has 3 parts. First, we'll briefly learn about reincarnation and the soul. Then, we'll look at the similarities between dreams and life so that we can understand that life is a dream. And lastly, we will look at an imagined event to help you understand that life is a dream. Now let's begin. Part 1. Reincarnation is the idea that a part of you survives death and goes on to experience a new life. We can call this part of you consciousness, awareness, spirit, or soul. In previous videos, we looked at evidence of reincarnation, and we talked about why we experience reincarnation. Now I will briefly explain why we experience reincarnation. Take a look at this pregnant mother. Her fetus needs the ingredient called consciousness. If the fetus could create consciousness on its own, then there would be no need for reincarnation. In fact, reincarnation would be impossible. However, if consciousness cannot be created at all, then the fetus needs to get this ingredient from someone who has died. The fetus cannot create this ingredient, so it must get this ingredient from an outside source. Consciousness existed before birth, and it survives death. Therefore, it makes sense that consciousness cannot be created and it cannot be destroyed. The big question is, how does reincarnation work? Is the soul traveling from the body of a dead person to the body of a fetus? If the soul is made of particles, then it would have to travel from one body to the next. Let's say the soul is a gas. When a person dies, the dead person releases a gas called the soul. What is going to happen to this gas? Well, it's going to spread out. Moreover, the wind would spread out the gas even more. Therefore, the soul would not be able to travel into the body of a pregnant mother. A basketball can travel from one place to another because it's made of particles and it exists in space and time. But the soul cannot travel because it isn't made of particles and it exists outside of space and time. So then how do we imagine reincarnation? Part 2. Meet Brian. Brian is dreaming that he's eating bread in Paris, France, but suddenly the dream changes. Now Brian is dreaming that he's kicking a ball in Madrid, Spain. Here's the question. Did Brian travel from Paris, France to Madrid, Spain? No, of course not. Brian is laying on his bed. He barely moved. However, his brain is creating the dream of being in France, and then his brain is creating the dream of being in Spain. Similarly, we can think of the universe as a dream. The soul exists outside of space and time, which means it exists outside of the universe. Reincarnation works like this. You experience one life as a man from China, but then you die and you experience a new life as a woman in Russia. Did the soul travel from one place to the next? No, of course not. These different experiences were created within you. They were created by your consciousness, your mind. Now let's look at some similarities between Brian's experience of dreams and the soul's experience of the universe. When Brian wakes up from a dream, the person that Brian was within the dream stops existing. Also, the entire dream stops existing. Similarly, when a person dies, the soul continues to exist, but the person stops existing. Also, the universe stops existing, but only from the perspective of that particular soul. Now you might be thinking, why does the universe stop existing? Think about the word existence. What do we mean when we say an apple exists? When we say an apple exists, we're saying we sense the apple using our sensory organs. We can interact with the apple using our hands, and we can measure the apple using our measuring tools. That's how we know an apple exists. But if a person died, that soul cannot sense the universe through sensory organs because the soul has no sensory organs. Also, the soul cannot interact with the universe using their hands because the soul has no hands. And the soul cannot measure anything in the universe because the soul has no measuring tools. Therefore, the universe does not exist from the perspective of the non-living soul. Here's another similarity. The Brian that exists outside of the dream continues to exist, and this Brian experiences many more dreams from time to time. Similarly, the soul survives death and experiences many more lives. This is what reincarnation is. The universe that we see and know exists within our minds. Let's say there are 4 people that are interacting with one another, but suddenly one of them dies. The people who are alive believe the universe can exist without consciousness because they witnessed a person die, but the universe continued to exist. However, the soul of the dead person sees things differently. The soul continues to exist, but it's the universe that has stopped existing when the person died. Where did the universe go? Did the universe go hiding somewhere? No, of course not. The universe was created in our minds. The universe is a connected dream experience, and just because one soul stops dreaming for a period, that doesn't mean the other souls stop dreaming. Many people believe they can choose their next family, but if that were true, then no one would want to reincarnate into a family dealing with extreme poverty. Therefore, extremely poor people would not be able to make any babies. But the reality is, they do make babies. So how does reincarnation work? Let's look at 2 possibilities, and I want you to decide which of the 2 possibilities makes the most sense. First, imagine that a person died and the soul is looking for a new body. The soul sees a house with a wealthy family, but the problem is, there are many other souls waiting in line to reincarnate as the wealthy child. So, the soul continues to search for a new family, but all the wealthy families have souls waiting in line to reincarnate as the new baby. Therefore, the soul decides to reincarnate into a poor family with parents that have a long history of drug abuse. That is one possible explanation for why souls reincarnate into poor families. Second, imagine that a person died and the soul awoke, kind of like a person wakes up from a dream. For a period, the soul stayed awake, but then it went back to a dream state. In the dream, the soul experienced life as a poor person with parents that have a long history of drug abuse. This makes more sense because no one would choose to reincarnate into a poor family with bad parents. But if life is a dream that souls are having, then sometimes you have nightmares. No one chooses to have nightmares, but sometimes we're forced to experience nightmares. Now I want you to think about which idea makes the most sense. Are souls choosing to be born into an extremely poor family because all the wealthy families have souls lined up to reincarnate as the new child? Or is life a dream and are souls dreaming about being born in a poor family? Which one makes more sense to you? Now let's move on to another question. What did the origins of life look like? Let's look at 2 different possibilities of how life began, and I want you to decide which of the possibilities makes the most sense. First, imagine we had a large number of souls traveling the universe. They came across a planet called Earth. Earth didn't have any life, but souls started communicating with one another, and they said, "Hey guys, let's just wait here for a while. There may be life on this planet in a few billion years, so let's take a chance and wait here for a few billion years. Then we can experience life and reincarnation." Now here's the second possibility. Imagine souls began dreaming about life. The dream began with conscious life forms on Earth. As far as we know, the earliest conscious life forms on Earth were trilobites and fish. They lived about 500 million years ago. Which of these 2 possibilities makes the most sense? Did souls travel around and look for a planet with life? Or did the soul begin dreaming about life? In the second idea, the soul doesn't have to search for a planet with life because it's all a dream, and dreams cannot exist without consciousness, which means the dream must begin with conscious life forms, even though the dream appears to be way older than it actually is. If you ask me, the second idea makes way more sense. We spend billions of dollars on the most advanced scientific tools, but we can't find life in the universe. That's how difficult it is to find life in the universe. But in the first idea, souls came across a planet with water, and they correctly guessed that it would develop into a planet with life forms. That seems highly unlikely. In the second idea, souls didn't have to search for a planet with water because it was all created in our minds. Part 3. I want you to imagine that we took all the souls out of the universe and we never went back to the universe. That means the universe has no consciousness at all. Now here's the question. Does the universe exist? Here's why the answer is no. When we say an object exists, we're saying we can see the object and we can interact with the object. If no one can see and interact with the universe, then we can't say the universe exists. You see, the universe is a dream, and like all dreams, it cannot exist without consciousness. That's the thing that keeps the dream alive. If you want to understand the truth about the universe, you must first understand that consciousness cannot be created and it cannot be destroyed. Therefore, we don't need the universe to exist, but it is the universe that needs consciousness to exist. Dreams need consciousness to exist. Thoughts need consciousness to exist. This is the truth about ourselves and the universe. In the movie The Matrix #1, Morpheus gives Neo, the protagonist, two options, the red pill or the blue pill. If Neo takes the blue pill, he will forget everything, and he will believe in some false idea about reality. But if he takes the red pill, he will know the truth about reality. Neo ends up taking the red pill, and he learns that the universe exists within a dream. Similarly, I want you to take the red pill. That is to say, I want you to realize that the universe is a dream. But the problem is, so many people have taken the blue pill. They believe consciousness is created by brain activity, and they believe that consciousness doesn't survive death. However, it's up to you to wake up and know the truth. Hey guys, if you're looking for a thought-provoking spiritual book, check out The Great Spiritual Awakening. The link is in the description. And in the next video, we will learn about destiny and how it goes against the idea of heaven and hell. Click on the thumbnail to watch the video, and last but not least, have an amazing, wonderful day.